Warning, the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. Now, here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
It is the Savage Nation on this historic day. We do know it's a historic day. And I will summarize it in one sentence for you on the Savage Nation. It was somewhere between Reagan and Chamberlain. Now, that's not enough to satisfy either side, but that's the way I see it. And there's a lot at stake in today's program for me in particular. It's very easy to take the position, as the bootlickers are, that it was a great victory for Donald Trump. But it wasn't a great victory for Donald Trump. It was a very great first step in some ways, but a very grave step backwards in others. This was the first meeting between the United States and a North Korean leader, ever. I could ask you who won the summit, Trump or Kim, to make it into a simplistic discussion, but it's not such a bad way to initiate the discussion. Who won the summit, Trump or Kim? Did Trump say and do enough about the North Korean death camps? Who was the worst media prostitute of all? These are some of the questions I hope to cover today on the Savage Nation. And before I get into my monologue, which I haven't gotten into, really, I'll give you my phone number, which is 855-400-7282 on the Savage Nation. So again, let me summarize my view of this summit. It was somewhere between Reagan and Chamberlain. But what was really achieved last night? Well, this was a diplomatic breakthrough, but all of history teaches us we must remain vigilant. History shows us that North Korea has made promises in the past and broken them repeatedly. Kim signed a document. Okay, he's done that before. When? Did you know that he's done that before? In October of 1994, President Bill Clinton made a speech about a landmark nuclear agreement between the United States and North Korea, saying the following. This is Clinton now. This agreement is good for the United States, good for our allies, and good for the safety of the entire world. Close quote. So what makes this document signed by Trump and Kim different? Well, the leaders are different and the times are different. Kim Jong-un is not his father. Donald Trump is not Bill Clinton. Maybe that can make a difference. The document they both signed said that they would work towards complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula in exchange for security guarantees to Kim, including halting military exercises, which Trump announced, by the way, he's doing already without anything in return. But it said nothing about human rights abuses. Nothing about the hundreds of thousands of people dying in death camps in North Korea. Now, there was another document signed once upon a time by two men. Their names were Neville Chamberlain and Adolf Hitler. The document was declared to guarantee peace in our time. What happened next? Hitler invaded Czechoslovakia, Moravia, and Bohemia on his way to taking over Europe. When asked by an NBC reporter this morning about calling Kim very talented, knowing that Kim has killed family members, killed his own citizens, and Otto Warmbier, President Trump said, quote, he is very talented to be able to run a nation. Not that he's running it nice. He's very tough, but he didn't say anything about it. Close quote. I have no idea what it means. How can you gloss over the death and starvation of millions of people like that? It's almost like the old New York Times reporter Walter Duranty, who famously ignored and denounced reports of famine in Ukraine under Soviet control and often explained away the brutality of Joseph Stalin, saying it was necessary to implement that system. Stalin loved the coverage he got from Duranty, as he ruthlessly imprisoned and killed millions of Russians. Duranty even got a Pulitzer for his efforts. What's interesting to me is that for years, conservatives have criticized the New York Times and Walter Duranty for having done this. Very interesting. Yes, reporters at the press conference in the early morning today asked Trump about these abuses to their credit, finally. But Trump's answers were lacking. You could say that that's wise diplomacy. But my friends, Ronald Reagan wasn't afraid to call the Soviet Union an evil empire or to tell Gorbachev to tear down that wall. This is not a business deal. There are tens of millions of lives on the line. And so while this is a great first step, the crimes of Kim must be addressed, and we need proof that they will be stopped. Again, I will summarize. It's somewhere between Reagan and Chamberlain, and I will begin by playing Ronald Reagan in his great speech of Mr. Gorbachev, Tear Down This Wall.
General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
No, I personally thought it was a great first step, but what did we get out of it so far? Why couldn't the president have done it in a nice Reagan-esque way and say, Mr. Kim, tear down those death camps? Would it have been so hard to say that? I understand that would have been, let's say, a little aggressive toward the maniac, Kim. I get it. But now let's listen to the other side, because today's show is entitled Between Reagan and Chamberlain. Here is British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain in his famous Peace in Our Time speech from September 30th, 1938.
This morning I had another talk with the German Chancellor, Herr Hitler. And here is the paper which bears his name upon it as well as mine. We regard the agreement signed last night as symbolic of the desire of our two peoples never to go to war with one another again.
Hip, hip, hooray. Well, what happened next was peace in our time led to the invasion of Czechoslovakia, Bohemia, Moravia. Kim's not going to invade Singapore, but what's going to happen next? Tell me what's going to happen next. Now, I will take your calls on this, on human rights. I realize you don't care about human rights. Those days are over. In fact, I think that the more I think about the times we are living in, the conservative movement or the conservative thinking of the Ronald Reagan era have been dead so long that most Americans don't even know what human rights are, nor do they care about them. Just as family values are dead in America today, at least politically, so are human rights issues. They're dead as a doornail. That's my opinion. It's a different time, a different place, and I don't even think this generation even knows what human rights mean. So I could ask you again, is this a loss or a victory for Trump and for America? Is it a victory for the world? Well, as I said to you earlier, on one hand, it looks like maybe Kim did play Trump. Is he taking advantage of Trump's inexperience as a politician? And is this some sort of game that Trump got himself into? Will this lead to Trump being backed into a corner and giving Kim some sort of upper hand? Never forget that Kim Jong-un is a dictator, right? A dictator. You know what that means? And he has not been an ally to practically anyone on earth. So is this evil little man up to something really deceptive? Look what happened with the Iran deal. Obama got played, but on the surface to the average person, it looked like a victory, didn't it? Or we must ask ourselves, has Trump so wisely played the game, as many of you would like to believe, and maybe is true? Has Trump intimidated Kim into submission? Never forget that Donald Trump is the most powerful man in the world, running the most powerful nation in the world. That can be intimidating for any leader on earth. Trump was relentless in his comments and put-downs towards Kim on the road to the summit. And yes, Trump's red button is bigger and more powerful than Kim's, and it works. So did Kim see this as an opportunity to change the way the world views him and his nation? Was he scared of the possibility that he could be easily wiped out, and now there is actually a man in office that wouldn't hesitate doing it? Look, the answers to these questions cannot be easily answered until we know more about what took place yesterday. Pretty much all we know is that the President of the United States and an unstable dictator shook hands, talked, signed documents, and looked friendly in front of the spotlight. At this point, that can be seen as both good or bad, depending upon which side of the aisle you are on. Now, not so strangely, or really very strangely, Trump's biggest allies on the North Korean talks are not staunch conservatives. They are progressive Democrats. Did you know that? That's right. Does that mean if you think Trump won, you're a progressive Democrat? I don't know. I don't know what it means. Now, we have to look at other places for some of the answers. And we will be looking at a never-Trumpers view of the summit. Jennifer Rubin of the Washington Post was vicious in her article today, where she said how Trump lost the summit before the photographers even left the room. I don't agree with her, but you have to listen to it, which I'm going to read to you in a while, because she's a fine writer, and although she's a never-Trumper, it's worth listening to both sides on this issue. But finally, in my opening, I'd like to read for you the joint statement of President Trump and Kim Jong mentally ill-un of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea at the Singapore summit. I won't read you every word. You can find it in many other places, and I'll summarize it. Trump committed to provide security guarantees to the DPRK, and Chairman Kim Jong-un reaffirmed his firm and unwavering commitment to complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Let me pause on that. According to the document they signed, and this was a no deal unless he would have agreed to this in advance, the dictator said, at least it says here, his firm and unwavering commitment to complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. He doesn't spell out what that means. It goes on. The document says, convinced that the establishment of new U.S.-DPRK relations will contribute to the peace and prosperity of the Korean Peninsula and of the world, and recognizing that mutual confidence building can promote the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, President Trump and Chairman Kim Jong-un state the following. Okay. They commit to establish new U.S.-DPRK relations in accordance with the desire of the peoples of the two countries for peace and prosperity. Sounds like Chamberlain. The United States and DPRK will join their efforts to build a lasting and stable peace regime on the Korean Peninsula. Nice words. Reaffirming the April 27, 2018 Panmunjom Declaration, the DPRK commits to work toward complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. The U.S. and the DPRK commit to recovering POW MIA remains, including the immediate repatriation of those already identified. There's more in it. What actually is substantial in it, I don't really know. What has been committed here? Well, unwavering commitment to complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Okay, it's a step. It's the first play in a long haul. We got to say that's better than seeing a missile launched at Guam and a nuclear war. So let's take a pause for a minute and say, bravo, Donald Trump. In context of how I presented what I presented to you today, at least we are not seeing the threat of nuclear war hanging over our head at this time. Is that not a good thing? Yes, it's a very good thing. And so, therefore, you could say the entire human race is the victor at this time. But we have to see where this goes. And I like to see where you go. And you know the questions. I say it's somewhere between Reagan and Chamberlain. I asked you who won the summit, Trump or Kim. I asked you, did Trump say and do enough about North Korean death camps? I asked you who was the worst media prostitute of all. It's not too hard to figure that one out. It's someone who invited the dictator to sleep in his hotel room for a ratings point. I'll be right back. This is the Savage Nation.
Savage.
Savage says it was somewhere between Reagan and Chamberlain. It was a diplomatic breakthrough, but we must remain vigilant. And I highly recommend that you listen to the podcast of this show if you missed my monologue, because I don't want to repeat myself today. Let me take a couple of quick calls before I continue with observations and comments by some younger people who work for this show and some writers who don't work for this show, who have things to say that are worth listening to, even though I disagree with them. Because there's no clear answer to this question. Many of you answered and said the world won. And that's probably the truth. Temporarily, there is peace at hand. Temporarily. And we can't be pessimistic at every step of the way and say but, because there is no but right now. WABC Theo, what's your opinion? Go ahead, please.
Yes, sir. Donald Trump is no Neville Chamberlain. I think that extreme is not there. Neville Chamberlain didn't have any of the qualities of Donald Trump. Now, to ask Donald Trump to be Reagan-esque, I think that is too predictable. So I think Trump is going to do something unique, and I think right now, as a good salesman, he got a customer hooked, and he's reeling them in, and we'll see more. We will see more as time goes on. The best is yet to come. Who knows when that deal will be closed, but this is a real sensitive deal in the business sense of the word. Maybe, who knows, it'll happen over dinner at Mar-a-Lago, but it'll happen.
What will happen? What will happen?
The things that we aspire, that I would like to see a formal peace treaty. Most people overlook. You and I know that there is.
Well, what about? Let me ask you something. I know he couldn't take care of everything in the first meeting, Are you at all concerned with the hundreds of thousands of people suffering in slave labor camps?
Of course I am, but if we get a peace treaty with North Korea, I think these things will follow.
Well, good. That's a good answer. At least you even know about it. You know, there's a media blackout on the North Korean death camps. Ask yourself why the liberal media doesn't show images of the North Korean slave labor camps. Ask yourself why they, of all people, are not showing these things. Why? Yeah, that's the real question. The great liberals, like the collapsing Andy Blooper with the clear eyeglasses, whose show is collapsing. They took an hour away from him. People are looking right through these people, okay? But when I say it's between Reagan and Chamberlain, that's not begging the question of should he be Reagan or should he be Chamberlain. I would say that this is somewhere between Reagan's Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall, and Chamberlain saying we have peace at hand. Although, my friends, I'm sorry to tell you, we did hear we have peace at hand, you know, and we have some sound on that. It's pretty kind of freaky when you listen to it. Now, I want to read you, if I can, in the 50 seconds that I have before I gag on another break, some of the thoughts from the Savage Nation staff. I think the most important is from Doug Lin, who is of North Korean descent. Doug Lin has worked for my show for 16 years. Doug's mother is North Korean. She escaped North Korea with nothing on her back, and she walked over ice-covered mountains. And she said the following: my mother is a Korean War survivor, and she never thought this day would come. Just the fact that they are talking is a start, and it is a momentous occasion. That's very short and very much to the point, and maybe that summarizes it all for the Savage Nation. When I come back, I'll read Jim Verde's, Clint Granberry's, Karen O'Toole's, and Ryan O'Callahan's views, so you get a different idea of opinions.
Savage.
Many of you are saying that the world is the big winner, and in many ways, as of this moment, you are right. It certainly could have gone the other way over the last months, if you remember. We were living with the fear that this madman from North Korea would launch a nuke at first Guam, then Hawaii, and then maybe even the West Coast. Remember, he was threatening that. And now they were in a golf cart together, smiling, sharing short ribs together, which I thought is quite symbolic, but I don't want to go into the food. I don't know who picked the menu, but I thought it was symbolic. At least it wasn't McDonald's. But what do the younger people who work for me have to say? I read you what Doug Lin said. His mother is of North Korean origins, who walked over the mountains of Korea and came here with nothing on her back. She survived living in mountains of ice. And he said she never thought this day would come, and just the fact that they're talking is a start and is a momentous occasion. Jim Verde is a call screener producer of the show. I can't say he's much young. I'm joking. He's a little on the middle ground age-wise. And he said, I watched and was spellbound, could not turn my eyes away, felt I was watching an historic moment that I haven't witnessed in decades. I also think Trump's eyes are wide open and he has no illusions. Mike Pompeo is the right man in the right position for this moment. I still have an uncle buried on the North Korean side that my family would like to get back. I'm sorry, Jim. I feel optimistic. Yeah, people forget the Korean War, the forgotten war. Clint Granberry said, the summit is the first domino. It has little effect on the outcome, but was necessary in starting the game. Very to the point, Clint. Karen O'Toole says, I'm cautiously optimistic that this summit will yield results. Nevertheless, it's refreshing to see action rather than platitudes from our president. Ryan O'Callahan says, my view on the meeting between Kim and Trump is somewhat neutral at this point, mainly because we still have pretty much no idea what was said or signed or what will come of this. So if you want to chime in, go ahead. It was a diplomatic breakthrough by any means, and if it was Obama, this would be a Nobel Prize. Let's back up here. If Obama had even gotten Kim to the table to stop threatening bombing Guam or Hawaii, Obama would have been given a Nobel Prize before the ink was even dry on the agreement. Is that right? You know it's right. So we understand the biases against Donald Trump, and perhaps the worst of them, although well-written, were those written by Jennifer Rubin of the Washington Post, who was allegedly hired to be the conservative voice, I believe first at the Wall Street Journal, then for the Washington Post, and she has been a never-Trumper, as have many in the media who are now his bootlickers. Jennifer Rubin is a never-Trumper, so is Sean Hannity, and so are others who now pretend to love Trump. But okay, people change. Jennifer Rubin, a never-Trumper, wrote how Trump lost the summit before the photographers even left the room. And I'll read some of her sentences because they're well done. The spectacle of the murderous dictator Kim Jong-un on equal footing with the President of the United States, each country's flag represented, a supposedly normal diplomatic exchange between two nuclear powers was enough to turn democracy lovers' stomachs, she writes. President Donald Trump naturally made things worse. He gushed, "It's my honor, and we will have a terrific relationship, I have no doubt," unquote. She writes, "An honor to meet the man who maintains slave labor camps, who periodically attacks the ships of our ally South Korea, and whose regime is responsible for the death of Otto Warmbier. That should stun Warmbier's parents and every decent human being," she writes. Trump envisions a terrific relationship with a country that conducts mass hacking, is arguably the worst human rights violator, threatens us with nuclear weapons, detains our people, and seeks the reunification of the Korean Peninsula under its rule of terror. Now listen to this paragraph. This got my attention, and I want you to listen to it objectively. Jennifer Rubin writes, "Imagine if President Barack Obama traveled to Iran, shook Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's hand, proclaimed it was a great honor, and spoke about his conviction that Iran and the United States would have a terrific relationship. John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, among others, would have had a conniption." So there's more here that she writes, but that is a very interesting point, which is everything has to be seen in context. It's not through the looking glass. You know, this country is divided right now, as it has been for a long time, between one side and the other. And no matter what Obama did, he had his supporters and he had his attackers, and I was one of the attackers. I wrote 3 books about the negatives of Obama, so I'm very aware of the division. And now Trump is president. We have a divided nation that I've not seen as divided since the Vietnam War. I've never seen such hatred as I see heaped upon Donald Trump, perhaps the most deranged being the actor Robert De Niro. And I must pause on the De Niro for one moment. As you know, I've been on to De Niro for a long time because there's such a thing as hating Trump or disliking Trump and disagreeing with Trump, criticizing Trump. And then there's several rungs beyond that of pathology. De Niro is showing all the signs of pathology. For him to have gotten up in front of the so-called Tony Awards the other night and say F Trump and see the stoners and the junkies in tuxedos cheering wildly tells you what the music industry is composed of. A bunch of no-goodniks who are poisoned in the mind and poison the mind of the world. But for the actor De Niro to say F Trump on national television indicates a pathological, not hatred, folks, but a pathological jealousy. Now, I've explained this to some friends who finally got what I've been saying, and I want to go into it for a minute because we're talking about Trump hatred now that has reached a point of pathology. De Niro's hatred is pathological, in my opinion, because of jealousy. You say, well, what is he jealous of? Remember, these were 2 New York guys about the same age bracket in the same exact generation, occupying the same alpha male niche in New York, Manhattan society for many decades. And who was winning? Well, they were vying for many years. De Niro was on top because he was more famous as an actor, right? Trump was a businessman. He had a TV show. He did this. He did that. He had buildings with his name on it. So it was a competition. But in many ways, De Niro felt he was clearly the alpha male. Now, the worst thing that De Niro could ever envision happens. His number one competitor for the niche of top alpha male becomes president of the United States of America, leaving De Niro as simply a comedic actor. And so De Niro becomes pathologically jealous. And that explains why De Niro is pathologically insane and why we should not take a word that he says seriously. I could say boycott his movies. That's your decision. I told you months ago, years ago, I see certain actors after the primaries in the election and what they had said about white people, what they said about we the deplorables. I told you if I see them if I'm scanning TV for a movie, I see De Niro, even though I like him as an actor, I go over the movie. I won't watch it. That's my little protest. There are others whose careers have gone up in the toilet who have shown themselves to be stone-hearted racists during the campaign. I don't have to mention their names. We're focusing only on this one Robert De Niro situation, which is an example, again, of jealous pathology. That's my opinion. But let's get back to the summit itself. What specifics about what steps Kim would take to back up his promises to denuclearize his country? What about the verification? We don't know. It's early in the game. It's the first inning of a World Series, right? So to demand all of these answers at the first summit is not only dishonest, but it's foolish. Because summits can lead to results, but they aren't the result themselves, right? So we'll see what happens. Right now, there are no threats of nukes being launched at Guam, Hawaii, or the West Coast, or Japan for that matter. So this is a positive day. So when I ask you who won the most at the summit, Trump or Kim, the answer is, truthfully, the world. Right now, the world is at peace. This crazy man, Kim, was threatening nuclear war. And I told you months ago I couldn't sleep some nights. I was afraid I'd wake up in the morning and I would see that this crazy man had actually launched. On the other hand, I can't just do one thing or the other. I have to remember what went on many decades ago. And I brought up the old New York Times reporter Walter Duranty, who ignored and denounced reports of famine in Ukraine under Soviet control, and then even apologized and explained away the brutality of Joseph Stalin, saying it was necessary to implement that system. The Duranty of our time is Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity is now the Duranty of our time. He will never, ever attack. He will not. I can almost guarantee you won't hear anything out of his mouth about the brutality of Kim Jong-un from here on in. And the low point in the media was hit last night when this very same vainglorious man, Sean Hannity, had the audacity to inveigle his way into this historic summit and say, I'm inviting Kim Jong-un to sleep in my hotel suite. I'll sleep on the couch. That's a media presence unlike any ever seen in history. That he is a close confidant to the president, from my point of view, is very worrisome. Not because I'm jealous. I'm way past needing anything Sean Hannity has. I don't need the money. I don't need the acclaim. I don't need a TV show. Trust me. But I'm very worried about a man who is so close to the president that he allegedly calls him every night or several times a day with his advice. And I'm starting to wonder if this juvenile high school dropout, who is so drunk on his own power, is actually writing the tweets for Donald Trump, which would explain some of the idiocy that we've seen over the years. I'm saying to you what I've said in private to friends. And let me tell you something. I am through the envelope. I can't go back. I went through the envelope. What you're hearing from me is what I said to a friend on my day off yesterday as we spent the afternoon together, a very intelligent friend of mine who has a very important publication. This is what I said to him. So what am I going to do? Get on the radio and tell you something else? What I am is what I am. What you hear is what you hear. What I say in public, more or less, is what I think in private. There's not, two faces of Eve here. So that's where we're at. I can open it up to you, the callers. I've given you several different sides thus far. We have played Reagan's Gorbachev tear down this wall speech, which I would like to have heard. I would have only asked one more thing from the president, which would be to say, at the summit as he signed it, with a smile, not a hatred, not an anger, not a threat, Mr. Kim, now that we're signing this agreement, tear down those slave labor camps. Wouldn't that have been nice to hear, Clint? Wouldn't that sort of have been a good thing to hear? Listen to clip number 1 if you missed it many years ago.
General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Savage.
Welcome back to the Savage Nation. We'll talk about the news of the day as we have been doing, but first I'm going to tell you about the great product Super Beets. Why? Well, you know, it's a product I've been talking about for cardiovascular health, but some interesting things have happened. Now, let's say you've been wanting to try Super Beets, but have been holding back. Well, for a limited time, there's a new product. It's called Super Beets Energy Plus, and what they did was team up beets with another superfood, green tea. What does that mean? It's made from non-GMO beets infused with an added boost from green tea extract. So if you've thought about trying Super Beets for a healthy energy kick, this is the one for you with its natural plant-based caffeine source. You've got to try this new version, Super Beets Energy Plus. All new, natural berry flavor helps promote improved energy, mental focus, support a healthy cardiovascular system. You will feel the difference that this green tea makes. Now, we're only making this product available to the listeners of our show, so make sure you take advantage of this new release today. What you do is you call 800-481-0504 or go to savagelovesbeets.com. With your first order of Super Beets Plus, they're going to give you a 30-day supply of new Super Beets Energy Plus infused with green tea for free. And then you get indicator strips to test how it's working in your body and free shipping. Simple. Call 800-481-0504 or go to savagelovesbeets.com today. So to make it simplistic, if I ask you who won the summit, Trump or Kim, it may not be either or. Some people say humanity won, and if peace is achieved, humanity definitely won. Others say Kim knew he was under a lot of pressure to give in for the sake of his own self and country. President Trump knew what he was doing from the start. President Trump knew how to manipulate the deal. President Trump won it for the world. Many of you would like to believe that, and God bless you. You can believe it if you want. That's fine. We'll have to wait and see. We don't really know what this is going to lead to. At the end of the day, do we really know? And then others are saying, why are you asking the question? I don't know why you're afraid of questions. Isn't that the nature of human thought, which is asking questions and trying to answer them? So let's turn it to the callers. Are you ready? Are you ready? WABC, Don, your opinion, who won, Kim or President Trump or humanity? Who won?
Oh, absolutely. I think humanity won. Thank you for taking my call, good doctor. I just wanted to say, when you compare, Reagan and Chamberlain, to me, was one of the biggest traitors ever. So I find it a little bit difficult to bring him into the equation. I do.
Well, wait, hold on. You don't understand something. Chamberlain was not a traitor. Neville Chamberlain was not a traitor. He was just a laborite. He wanted peace. He was a liberal, but didn't mean he was a traitor.
Oh, well, I mean, he essentially decided he wanted to give away the island, the British Isle. I mean,
what do you mean he wanted to? When did he ever say, take it from me? When did he say to Hitler, take the island, the British Isles? He
wanted to surrender.
Well, I don't know if that's historically true. I don't think he wanted to surrender at all. But we're arguing over a moot point. My caption is really quite clear. It's somewhere between Reagan and Chamberlain, but I wouldn't say Chamberlain was a traitor at all.
And you can hypothetically argue that. I absolutely agree. I would think that FDR, though, if you want to talk about labor camps during the Yalta Conference, he never said to Stalin, you have to close your labor camps. So, to me, the worst things in the entire world, especially if you've read, anything about the labor camps, we have to take it one step at a time. And I think that FDR knew that. I think that Trump knows that. I think that Reagan knew that. And that's just my thoughts. I just think that.
Well, why did Reagan say, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall?
Oh, well, I mean,
he didn't have to say that. He could have said, I'll be more diplomatic and I won't mention it at all, and it'd still be a wall.
Savage. Warning, the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. Now, here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
All right. Well, we didn't hear that. It's different times, different men. Welcome to the Savage Nation. What's interesting, though, and almost eerie, and I'm the only one in the media who will tell you this today, except those who copy me. Do you know that it's exactly today, June 12th, 1987, that Reagan gave his famous Tear Down This Wall speech? That's right. Did you hear that on any of the other networks, shows? I don't think so. It's arcane, I understand, but to me, quite symbolic in a way. Reagan's Tear Down This Wall speech, June 12th, 1987. All right, we didn't hear tear down these concentration camps. It's the first step of a long process. Trump goes on ABC and says, I do trust him. Now there's talk of North Korean condos and hotels. I don't know whether they'll name the beach Kimami Beach, which is a combination of Kim and Miami. I created it just for you, Kimami Beach. Could be. I don't want to be comedic in the political arena right now, but truthfully, who the hell would ever go to North Korea for a condominium? I mean, if I had a choice between Hawaii and North Korea, I don't think I would choose North Korea as a destination. If I had a choice between a North Korean condo and, let us say, a condo in Singapore, I mean, is there a choice? Who would go there? So what is this nonsense about North Korean condos when you've got slave labor camps? Meanwhile, Iran, the spoiler, the Muslim state of North Korea, warns North Korea that they shouldn't trust Trump. Iran is from another century. Iran is living in another world. And they're a spoiler. All they do is give hate and destruction. Iran, it used to be a great nation, a world leader. It's become nothing but filled with morons in medieval outfits threatening the world, making women live in the Middle Ages. I wouldn't listen to a word Iran says. They're not important. Now, what did Israel have to say about this? So far, nothing. That's interesting. We have to see what Israel has to say because the Israeli response will be very telling in many ways, right? But what is the Trump doctrine? That's another question. A senior White House official defines the Trump doctrine as, we're America, bitch. I'm not making that up. That came from the movie from many years ago about Kim Jong-un. Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic writes that that's what they say. They say that his staff says that there is a Trump doctrine, and it can be reduced to one sentence, which is that we're America, bitch. The best distillation of the Trump doctrine, Goldberg writes, came from a senior White House official with direct access to the president and his thinking. Goldberg, if you can believe a word Goldberg says, I was talking to this person several weeks ago, and I said by way of introduction that I thought it might perhaps be too early to discern a definitive Trump doctrine. No, the official said, there's definitely a Trump doctrine. What is it, I asked. Here is the answer I received. The Trump doctrine is, we're America, bitch. That's the Trump doctrine. And they asked the official, what does that mean? And he said, well, Obama apologized to everyone for everything. He felt bad about everything. President Trump, this official said, doesn't feel like he has to apologize for anything America does. I later asked another senior official, one who rendered the doctrine not as we're America, bitch, but as we're American bitch, we're America, bitches, whether he was aware of the 2004 movie Team America, World Police, whose theme song was America F Yeah. Of course, he said, laughing. The president believes that we're America and people can take it or leave it. So maybe that's true. Maybe that comment is what they think, which is this macho, John Wayne-esque Western view of America. And after 8 years of Obama getting on his hands and knees and kissing the Saudis' fingers, doing a deal with the mullahs of Iran, putting down Trump voters, putting down the flag, putting down America, maybe this is a good appraisal of the Trump doctrine, one that is long overdue. This is the Savage Nation. If you care to comment on any of these topics that I've raised, and my main view hasn't changed really in the hour that I've done the show, which is that it's somewhere between Reagan and Chamberlain. You know, I wrote that before the show, somewhere between Reagan and Chamberlain, a diplomatic breakthrough, but we must remain vigilant. And what happens normally in a show is that as I speak and you call and I think about things, my views develop. Actually, I think it's brilliant to say it's somewhere between Reagan and Chamberlain. And I still think that that's the best analysis of it. And I'm very uncomfortable remembering Walter Duranty. Because here's the thing. Do you remember for years, intellectual conservatives would always talk about Walter Duranty, the New York Times reporter of the 1930s, who ignored and denounced reports of famine in Ukraine under Soviet control and often brushed off the brutality of Joseph Stalin? Now, many intellectual conservatives would talk about Walter Duranty, right? Where's the intellectual fervor amongst intellectual conservatives talking about the equivalent today, the slave labor camps in North Korea? I know you can't do it all at once. I know it's one step of a long process. But there's a part of me that remembers the Holocaust and can't seem to forget the stories of the train lines running into Auschwitz that could have been bombed by FDR, who didn't bomb them. I heard them over and over again. That was a stock in trade of people with a conscience, right? Where is the conscience in America today? Is there one left? Is conscience even discussed? Are human rights still an issue anywhere in the American dialogue? I don't think so. I think that in the age of antidepressants and illicit drugs and marijuana, I think that the conscience of America has gone up in smoke. Just as the question of family values has gone up in smoke, except for very small pockets of America. There is no discussion of human rights and no discussion of family values. And I don't blame anyone for it. It's an evolution in the wrong direction. I'm going to take your calls now. The phone number is 855-407-282. Aaron on WABC line 7. What's on your mind, Aaron?
Yeah, hi, Dr. Savage. I just wanted to say the following. You brought up Robert De Niro before, and I wanted to say that, you were always right all along, but I think what's happening now is that he's going from jealousy to envy. And what's the difference? Jealousy, before he was very jealous. He wanted to be Donald Trump. He wanted what he had. At this point, he realizes that will never happen, and now he's envious, and he's totally went pathological, and he wants to take away what Donald Trump has. What do you think about that?
But by and large, you agree with my analysis that De Niro has become pathologically insane. And when you say Donald Trump to De Niro, he becomes pathologically insane. And it's because I said it's because he's jealous of Trump. He lost to the alpha male in the alpha male race to Trump. And he's not really that important today. He's nothing. He's just an old actor who does comedy. That's all. But you're using a biblical view of the difference between jealousy and envy, aren't you?
Yes. What do you think about that?
See, I know. I mean, I can hear it. That's the thing is I actually listen to callers. And what you're doing is you're actually splitting the difference between or defining the difference between jealousy and envy, right?
Yes.
And you're giving it to me from a Talmudic point of view?
Let's leave the Talmud out. I just want your opinion.
I'm just saying, I know you're a religious man, right? I can hear it.
I'm in search. I have your book, God, Faith, and Reason, and I love it.
Well, I don't want to ruin it for you and your community by having people hear your voice and then they know you listen to me and you'll be ostracized from your community, right?
Okay, I'll always be a listener. You're a complex creative, and it's hard to find one like you.
That's nice to hear. Yeah, when God made me, he broke the mold. I get it. All right. Well, okay, I'm glad you're differential between jealousy and envy. Singapore summit. Good first step, no question about it. Let's give credit where credit is due. There's something for everyone and some things that were left out for everyone. There's enough to criticize and enough to salute. But let's not forget for 1 minute, this was an historic meeting. No one ever got Rocket Man out of his cave. Rocket Man came out of his cave well enough to enjoy Singapore, right? Have some short ribs with the president and see the world. Maybe he will change as a result of coming out of his hermit kingdom. Maybe he will see a world that he didn't even know existed. You know, it's one thing to see the high rises of Singapore on a video or on a television screen. It's another thing to ride around at night and look at them. And maybe he saw, maybe I could have that in my country. And just maybe he will break free of his grandfather and his father's insanity. Correct or not correct? The world is changing in so many ways. And so we have to be slightly optimistic about this historic summit and Trump's pledge to end the war games with South Korea today, which has rocked the world in the region, is quite a bold step, incidentally. You talk about taking the first step. First of all, Trump took the first step by calling for the summit. But Trump took the second step by pledging to end war games with South Korea, while the Rocket Man dictator has pledged nothing. All he did was sign a piece of paper. And before I take my first break, I'll tell you where paper, in my mind, goes. It goes into the dustbin of history. I'm not so sure that signing that paper means a thing, because let's not forget that in October of 1994, Bill Clinton made a speech about a landmark nuclear agreement between the U.S. and North Korea, after which Clinton wrote, "This agreement is good for the United States, good for allies, and good for the safety of the world." Well, nothing happened, though. Well, what makes the difference today, ladies and gentlemen of the Savage Nation? The leaders are different today. The times are different today. Kim Jong-un is not his father. Donald Trump is not Bill Clinton. Maybe that will make all the difference in the world.
Savage.
So what does the average moron in the San Francisco Bay Area care about? Dribblers. They don't even know there was a summit. The morons are watching the Warriors parade in Oakland. That's all that matters. Human cannon fodder, as my father would say. Human cannon fodder. Oh, the Warriors. I got a Warrior banner on my car. I got a Warrior banner at home. I'm buying a Warrior toothbrush and a Warrior underwear, a Warrior hairdo cream. Warriors. Now, while I hate real warriors, and I hate the police and I hate guns, I love the word warriors when it applies to dribblers from Oakland. That's what I'm dealing with here. That's what I'm dealing with in the San Francisco area. Cannon fodder, mental cannon fodder. Speaking of another news story other than the summit, Amazon has flexed its muscles in Seattle, and the city of left-wing Seattle backed down on the tax. Okay, so it just shows you. Meanwhile, in the stupid San Francisco Bay Area, it's the Warriors and where a celebrity dined. I should care where some junkie actress sat with her fat behind and ate in the San Francisco. 30 restaurants where Anthony Bourdain got to know. Tell me about him so I don't go there. The guy committed himself. He offed himself. So I want to eat in those restaurants because that moron ate there. I'm sick of Anthony Bourdain already. No one even people I know never heard of him. This is going on now day after day after day after day. He was a media insanity case. He wanted to be on the tube day and night. So he burned himself out. And he was a junkie. Every kind of drug imaginable in the kitchen over the years. What'd you expect to happen? Honorary San Francisco Tony Bennett now has his own street. How exciting. I left my heart in San Francisco. Mason and Sacramento. Very nice, Tony. Very nice, Tony. The streets are still what they've always been. Oakland prepares for Warriors parade that may get 1 million fans. The cannon fodder. They're lining up already, the morons. Warriors. But let's talk about this summit a little bit longer. After all, it was more historic than a basketball parade. I know I live in San Francisco where the brains left a long time ago and didn't shut off the lights. WABC Marty, line 7. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Doctor?
Yes.
Yes. Listen, I read your book, God, Faith, and Reason, and it changed my life. I bought it in, September, and it just changed my life. I recently buried my mother, my father, my dog, my house, and it brought me back to God. And
wow.
My life.
It's not sold in San Francisco. It's not allowed to be sold in the city because the people here are cannon fodder, human cannon fodder. They're interested in what they're told to be interested in, mainly the Warriors and things like that. I may have sold 6 copies in the San Francisco area, but you're one of the people who bought it where, in New York?
Yeah.
All right, I don't want to pander to you and peddle a book. How did my book, God, Faith, and Reason, help you through this crisis?
Ezekiel, with all the fire and brimstone, it was like, you got to be slapped in the face to realize what you're dealing with,
Look, I got to talk about it for 1 minute. I inserted biblical statements from the Old Testament throughout this book. It was almost as though my book itself had no meaning, meaning my words didn't matter. But I used my words for my audience to get you into the tent. But I really only wanted people to see the Bible. It was like my trick to get you to read the Bible again. I figured if I put it smattering here and there, right? People would see the Old Testament again, because most people are only two or three generations away from a religious ancestor. Am I correct about that?
Oh yeah, I'm a traditionalist Catholic. I go to the old man, Latin. Everything.
Interest. Oh well, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I so admire traditionalists in religion. But if you take the most psychotic guy in Hollywood, let's picture him in our mind together. Do I have to spell it out for you? Picture the most psychotic left-wing anti-Trumper in Hollywood. He is no more than 3 generations away from a religious human being who worshiped God, lived God, ate God, slept God. So it's still within him. You know what I'm saying?
Was he
I think that the flame of God is within all of us. And my one little hope was to reignite the interest in the eternal. It's really the basis of my whole show. It's what keeps me going every day. There's no other reason to be on the air.
Savage.
Well, what is the truth? Isn't that the question of the day? Isn't that the question every day? Who owns the truth? Where is the power? Where is the freedom? Is truth in jeopardy because of Trump's irregularities? Or is truth in jeopardy because of the anti-Trumpers who are pathologically insane with regard to their hatred of the man? I don't have an answer for you. I know what I think. I'm not going to think I'm going to convince the people on the other side. I mean, there's a lot of fake news out there, but what happened in Korea, in Singapore? Was it fake? Well, let's start with the top. We know the President of the United States was there. Is that fake or real? Well, that's real. We know that the Hermit Kingdom guy, the Rocket Man, was there. That's a fact. It's not fake news. That's the truth. So that truth unto itself is historic. Okay? Let's start with that. You can't take that away from it. We have fake news. That's real news. They were there. It's a historic meeting. Now, the rest is a little gray. What actually happened? Well, we know that Rocket Man's not threatening Guam, not threatening Hawaii, not threatening the West Coast. That's a good thing, isn't it? So that's truth. That's real. Can't take that away from the summit. Correct? A liar begins with making falsehood appear like truth and ends with making truth itself appear like falsehood. That was written in 1750 by William Shenstone. A liar begins with making falsehood appear like truth and ends with making truth itself appear like falsehood. Now, I realize that in this age of fake news and fake everything, the word truth itself sounds suspicious. I realize that illusions have become more real than reality. But it doesn't mean that those of us who can still see reality should be silent. So what is fake and what is real? What is fake news? Well, something happened that's memorable. The President of the United States got the head of North Korea to A, stop threatening us, and B, come to a meeting with him in Singapore. You can't take that away from Trump, can you? Can you? Can you take that away from him? Excuse me. Can any of you so-called progressives take that away from him? How can you? And if you do, I mean, it only makes you to sound stupid. It's that simple. And the biggest supporters right now of Trump's statesmanship are progressives. Yet it doesn't stop the cannon fodder writers from saying the summit was meaningless. He made a mistake. He elevated him. Good, I'm glad he elevated Kim. It's less likely Kim will launch a missile now that he's been elevated, schmuck. What do you want to... See, this is the stupidity of the left. They beat themselves up in trying to outdo each other with hating Trump. And all they do is look for the negative. Either they attack him or they attack Ivanka or they attack Jared. There's no end to it. Then when they get through with them, they attack the next Panada, who was the greatest first lady in American history. There's no end to their hatred. But even progressives, the smart ones, the intellectual ones, are saying it was a good thing. It was a good thing. Do you understand that? Of course, I personally would like to have heard something about the death camps, and I would like to have heard it a little louder than I heard it because I didn't hear it at all. But it's good to treat Kim as a statesman because a statesman is less likely to precipitously launch a nuclear armed rocket at any territory. Isn't it true? So it's a good thing. Can't you people get your head out of your hatred for 1 minute and see that it's a good thing? KSFO, Dan, let's go through the callers on line 2. Dan, what's your point? What's the topic? No one there. A blank. Next case. KSFO, Ken, line 1. Go ahead, please. You're on the Savage Nation.
Hi, Dr. Savage. I just wanted to make a point that last fall, the Democrats and the liberals were complaining that if Trump started a nuclear war, it'd be over in 30 minutes. And today, everybody on television is saying, why did he cancel these maneuvers, these troop maneuvers, when there's going to be 300,000 soldiers? Well, if we got 300,000 soldiers, the war's not going to last 30 minutes. So what's the problem? We don't need those exercises anyway.
Well, how do you think this? Let me ask you this: on the face of it, was this good or bad for the world?
I think it was good for the world because you have to step forward at some point in time and talk to somebody. You have to, otherwise you're always on the edge of an outbreak.
This was an historic first, and Trump's unlikely allies on North Korea talks were progressive Democrats. It's an article that came out in the McClatchy News Services today by Anita Kumar. And it says Trump has found an unlikely source of support as he meets with North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un Democrats. And some of the same far-left Democrats who complained that he stole the election and want to impeach and praise him for trying to engage in diplomacy. So they agree with you. Maybe this is great for the world, not just good.
That small group of people may agree with Trump on that subject, but the great majority of liberals, and especially all the...
Yeah, but you're talking about the loudest mouths with the lowest IQ. You're talking about Hollywood, the parrots who went to the high schools. You're talking about the people who went to the high schools of performing art who are nothing but parrots. They're not even macaws. They're just parrots. And so you take a guy like Robert De Niro, makes believe he knows what he's talking about because he made so much money and acts like a tough guy everywhere. And I'm sure he's a tough guy, but he's stupid. He's fundamentally still a kid at the High School of Performing Arts, still performing for those who went to the High School of Performing Arts around America. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Here you have progressive Democrats who can think, who are saluting him. 15 House members wrote a letter to Trump on Monday saying this: we are encouraged by your efforts to pursue direct diplomacy with North Korea with the dual goals of resolving the nearly 7-decade-long conflict and achieving the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. These are Democrats. They're progressives. It's a caucus. And they said, diplomacy is the only path to resolve the tensions between our countries. The Democrats are now on the side of Trump. Apparently that message did not reach Hollywood or the West Village. KSFO, Manny, line 4, what's your opinion? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good afternoon, Michael. I'm reminded of Chamberlain's, when he met with Hitler. I agree with you. This is between Chamberlain and Reagan. And after Chamberlain left, Hitler's remark was to think they were once a great country. You could say the same thing about San Francisco, by the way. I'm not at the Warrior game parade. Reagan was a great president, but I think it's important to look at another president, Nixon, in China. And what I saw yesterday reminded me of Nixon arriving in China. Different style. Trump is not Nixon. But, the country was very divided at the time. The left hated Nixon. And yet, he was very intelligent when it came to the world stage. And he seized on that ping-pong diplomacy to see an opening to go to China. And if you look at China then and you look at China now, the world in China is very different. And what Nixon saw, and they had death camps and everything going on in China. It was a super repressive society. But he realized that if you could open up China a little bit to capitalism, you would start a process that in the long term could not be stopped. Once you give...
Oh, wait, hold on. Let's pause. So far, I agree with you up to a point.
Yeah.
China is still a communist dictatorship. Communist dictatorship that kills people, takes them and puts them into concentration camps. They have death camps as well in China, only we never, ever hear about them.
But if you see this, a lot of other things have changed in China. Like they've just done away with the one-child policy. People now...
I know. They love Ferraris. They love Bentleys. They love champagne. They love pornography. They're very much like Americans in that regard.
Yeah, and the Chinese Communist Party is still trying to take control.
Yeah, they have a combination of the two. Maybe the worst of all things. They're capitalists, and they're also a dictatorship.
But it was a long-term process, and Nixon knew that. And if you try to accomplish too many things at once, I'm a teacher. We've talked in the past.
Now you're talking. That's what Trump was saying. How much can I do at once?
Things at once, and it's called keep it simple. You're not going to accomplish anything very well. And
Well, he couldn't. Okay, look, let's start from the top. He accomplished a great deal just by having the meeting with him, correct?
Correct, and he's a builder. And the tallest building still starts with a hole in the ground, okay? He understands the foundation. And what we saw was a seed. And I was watching the body language of North Korean. And the seed can fall on rock, just like in the Bible, there's mustard seed, or it could fall on ground. And I saw Trump, his behavior,
All I can say to you is the proof is in the pudding. When you have the progressive caucus, meaning the far left of the left.
Savage.
All right, the FBI has just issued an urgent request to reboot your home or office internet router now in order to help disrupt the massive foreign-based malware attack. Now, look, hundreds of thousands of routers have already been compromised. I don't know if you know this. The malware called VPN Filter could collect the information passing through your router. A compromised router can put your privacy and the security of your devices at stake. There are many threats in today's digital world. Good thing LifeLock identity theft protection now includes the power of Norton Security for additional protection. You see, LifeLock uses proprietary technology to help protect against identity theft like your info for sale on the dark web. Norton helps protect against online threats like ransomware. So listen, if you have a problem, their agents will work to fix it. No one can stop every cyber threat or prevent all identity theft, but new LifeLock with Norton Security can uncover threats you might otherwise miss. Join now, and for the first year, get an additional 10% off the low starting price of only $7.99 a month plus applicable taxes. Simply go to LifeLock.com, enter promo code SAVAGE. That's LifeLock.com, promo code SAVAGE. Now let's go to the callers. KBET Las Vegas, Carl, line 9, 30 seconds or less. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Dr. Savage, I think you've heard of the famous cowboy philosopher Will Rogers. He said famously, "I never met a man I didn't like." I think Trump has said, "I never met a dictator I didn't like." He seems to push that theory.
What exactly would you like to have seen instead of the summit? Would you like to have seen nuclear war?
No. What I'm trying
where are you coming from? In other words, the summit was no good to you because you'd rather see war?
No, it was fine. But what I'm trying...
Well, it's fine, but you still hate Trump. No matter what he does, if he cured polio, you say, why did he withhold the cure for so many years?
I don't hate him. I don't think he's... Well, I don't want to go into it. I've talked to you before. I'm a clinical psychologist. But
it sounds like you need one.
No.
I know what you say you are, but it sounds to me like you're low on your meds and you need one. Here is a day that you should be celebrating because all progressives are celebrating the summit. They're saying at least where we have a chance for peace. And you're sitting there putting down Trump saying he has an affinity for dictators. So what does that say about you, Carl?
Do you think he does? I'm asking you that.
No, I don't think he does. I'm not a dictator. He had me in the White House.
But you're not the head of a country.
Wait, you say he has an affinity for dictators? He had me in the White House and talked to me for 30 straight minutes about a number of topics. I'm not a dictator.
You're not the head.
So what do you mean he has an affinity for dictators? He had a basketball player in the White House. He's a dictator too? Your mind is clouded, Carl. I suggest a good therapist. I don't know of any in Las Vegas. Susan on KSFO line 1, go ahead, please.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to say that your cynicism is my constant source of entertainment.
You're laughing at your own joke. What have I said today that's cynical?
Well, you're a little cynical, but I really enjoyed it. I'm a little cynical, and
All right, like-minded people. One says he likes dictators, the other says I'm a cynic. I am a cynic. I've been cynical since I'm 6 years old, so that's my loss. Let me summarize where I'm coming from today because many of you didn't tune in at the beginning. I'll make it all over again in a few sentences. Today, to me, this was somewhere between Reagan and Chamberlain. It was a diplomatic breakthrough, but we must remain vigilant. So my summary, Savage says, it was somewhere between Reagan and Chamberlain. It was the first meeting between the United States president and a North Korean leader ever. That's a big deal. If you want to break it down to the simplicity of who won the summit, Trump or Kim, and I do that to provoke people, the fact is humanity won. Right now there's peace. We don't know what tomorrow will bring, right? I've also asked you, who was the worst media prostitute of all? There's no question it was Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity is so deranged with his power madness, like Robert De Niro, that he had the audacity to try to inveigle his way into last night's summit and say, I'm inviting Kim Jong-un to my hotel room. He can sleep in the bed and I'll sleep on the couch. If that's not a sign of derangement, I'd like to know what is. Okay? So there are many stories surrounding this summit. The big news is humanity won because at the moment, the threat of a nuclear exchange has diminished to near zero. Do you understand where we were a few months ago? We should all be breathing more easily today. That's not fake news. That's real news. And something not to be overlooked just because you hate Trump, like that psychologist from Las Vegas. Tim on WABC, line 8. Your opinion. Go ahead, please.
How are you?
Tim, you're on the radio. Say something already.
Yeah. I think the truth is extremely, extremely distorted today with that guy, President Trump. I mean, I can't let my kids listen to that guy. The things that comes out of his mouth.
What are you talking about? Idiot. There was just a summit. There's less of a chance of a nuclear war. What world are you living in, Tim?
All right, but, you know, also I think Kim Jong-un, as much as he's a dictator, he has values, and he believes in his values. And
oh, you're really sick. You're really either a sick person or you're trying to be funny, and really you don't have the brains for it.
What does that mean?
You know, like you're like the show I'm Dying Up Here. You would have been taken off the stage already. They would have hooked you right off the stage. So far, you made no points. Do you know that even progressive Democrats are allies with Trump on his North Korea summit? So where are you coming from, Tim? You think it makes you sound smart to say Trump is an idiot over and over again? You've said that. You made that point. Join Alec Baldwin and Robert De Niro. Go have a knish somewhere. You're not making any sense. Okay, Trump's unlikely allies on North Korea talks, progressive Democrats. The most progressive of the Democrats, the most far left, are encouraged by the diplomacy with North Korea. And many of you didn't get the memo yet. The mimeograph didn't arrive in your brain. This was a good thing. There comes a time at which you have to say, maybe I was wrong about Trump. Maybe he did the right thing here. Maybe there will be peace. But you're so sick that you're thinking like Robert De Niro. You can see nothing. You're so blinded with hatred and jealousy. And it also proves something else to you that you don't admit. You were wrong all along. Trump's irregular behavior has gotten Rocket Man to the summit. No other president ever has done that. Have a nice moment.
Michael Savage, a host like no other.